Hey, it's Alex Haynes from Boss FM and Unmuted Nation. A few weeks ago, me and my team put together a series called Black Man Hear Me. This series was really not for black men, but for you to understand the black man. How does the black man, what are the emotions, feelings, thoughts, and perspectives of black men? Why don't they share them? Why don't you hear them? Why don't people consider them people? I pulled men together from all over the country, different economic backgrounds, different cultural, religious backgrounds, different social status, but all black men. What is it like to see images of yourself attacked, brutalized by law enforcement here that's supposed to protect you? Or vigilantes that feel like they have authority over you because of the color of their skin. What is that like for the black man? What does that experience look like? In the wake of what we are seeing now with Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and the senseless attacks and killing on black life over and over again, my team and I thought it best to re-air this series for the next 5 days. So we will re-air it live. It'll be on our social platforms, but you can also watch it on demand. Download the Boss FM radio app from your app store, Apple or Android, or visit bossfm.com. Click Unmuted Nation and watch Black Man Hear Me. It's time that you hear what you're killing, what you're attacking, what you're demeaning. Share it, feel it, be it. Welcome to Unmuted Nation. If you've been paying attention, then you know we are in the midst of our Black Man Hear Me series. And this conversation is really all about starting conversation and pushing conversation forward in our communities and our homes and our culture. Um, we're viewed in so many different ways. And from the different guests that I've had, the events that have happened, not just in this country, but around the world, we have seen the differences in treatment, the different perspectives often attributed to Black people. And I have three gentlemen here that are going to speak to you today and we're just going to have another conversation. Black Man Hear Me. I've got Soul Love Hip Hop, O'Henny, and Isaiah Scott joining me. Gentlemen, how are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good, good, good.
I'm doing well, and I like to just kind of set the stage for people joining the conversation, because while we're going to give perspective and thought and just some viewpoints, um, and some human attachment to the black man, because so many times that's not the case. Black bodies are abused and misused in so many ways in our country. But before we jump into the conversation, I like the viewers and the listeners to know who they're having a conversation with. So I'm going to spend some time with each of you. And if you could just walk me through your childhood and where you're from, your childhood, and how you grew up, that'll give us some background. I'll go into some into some additional questions from there, but I'll kick it off with Oheni. Give us a little bit of information just about where you're from, what you do now, and who you are.
My name is O'Henny. I'm an artist from New York City. I was born in Harlem. I grew up in Harlem, Lenox Ave. I just dropped a project called Lenox Ave, ode to that. It was crazy growing up here in the 80s and 90s in Harlem. Crack was very strong. So I had parents that were both like, my mother was addicted to drugs, but my father was like an activist. So it was a very split sort of growing up situation. And I was like one of the first to go to college, the first to go to college, if you will. Um, Not ever, but for my immediate family. And it was just, I went to a predominantly white school. I did not know that many white people existed until I got to college. Um, I think that, like, growing up here in New York, it sort of toughened me a lot for the rest of my existence as an artist, as a human. Uh, for my first encounter with police, they had drawn guns on me. We were sitting on my friend's stoop. So, but also like a lot of my teachers were black. There was a lot of black love when I grew up here, even though it was a lot of struggle. So that gives me sort of a dichotomy in personage. I can be both very soft and then also very hard and withstanding because of those. Because I know how far the world doesn't care about how my experience as a black man, which I don't think is the same as for everybody else.
Got it. I'm really I'm glad to hear. I'm actually interested to hear more about your background, but I'm glad that you're joining us for the conversation today. So Love Hip Hop. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just wanted to say thank you for having me. And I'm actually was born in the Bronx. I live in Atlanta right now. But I went to Rice High School in Harlem and all that. So shout out to Harlem, Ohaney.
Yo,
But I used to go down south every summer to like Rocky Mount, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia. So every summer I was that Bronx boy that went down south and got a little southern, flavor. But right now, I'm a Lyft driver. That's what I do for income. But at the same time, I'm a hip hop advocate, enthusiast. They call me the soul love hip hop because I so love hip hop, and I'm trying to put love back into my culture, and the culture is hip hop. So as a black man, when people think of hip hop, they think the worst of us. I'm here to show you that we could be the best of us. So like I'm a father. I'm 42 years of age. I'm a father. My daughter's in graduate school. I got a 24-year-old daughter. I got 11-year-old daughter. And I'm active in their lives and trying to just be a loving, good man. And that's what I want people to know about me as a black man. That's what I strive from since I was a kid. So I grew up in the 80s, hip hop. I grew up with rap music, Run DMC, down a block from the projects, middle class family. We just strive to just be good. And just a little tidbit about me too, like my family, the movie Remember the Titans and all that, that's about my grandfather's brother, you know what I mean, Herman Boone. So kind of having that kind of flavor instilled in you as a child, that's where I come from and that's who I be. So hope that, that was a good introduction of me. You know what I mean?
Nice. No, absolutely, man. Thank you so much for that, and thanks for joining the conversation, Isaiah.
All right. Well, thank you for having me as well. I'm Isaiah Scott. Was born in Far Rockaway, New York. I moved
Oh
here
wow.
about 13. Um, I was going back and forth, same as just about everybody else. I came down here during the. I went to New York during the summers, but I started playing sports. Played professionally, football, played college, played in Canada, not like the NFL or anything like that. Currently, I do loss prevention and security, and I model. I acted a little bit. I was in two movies. I was in one major motion, the Richard Jewell story last year. Nobody really saw it, but whatever. Um, just growing up, I grew up with. I'm adopted, but my cousin raised me, who I call my mother. My mom was real heavy on drugs. We grew a relationship later in life, so I think that helps out now. She recently passed last year. My mother who raised me, it was three of us, the youngest of the three, and it was like I don't want to say black story, but my stepdad. I don't really call him my stepdad because I don't want to give him that much credit, but like he was on drugs. My mom was dealing with his nonsense and trying to raise us at the same time. So essentially, I was raised by football coaches and teachers, and I think that's my background. And now I'm just trying to become a voice. With the modeling, I want to be more of a. I want to add the masculine rough side to the male modeling industry and like just a bigger, stronger type of guy that I don't think we really have had. And I just want to be able to, show that you can be that a lion is a cat, and that's what I want to.
No, I appreciate that. And
That's what I'm
again,
trying to point out to you.
thank you, gentlemen, for joining this conversation. It wouldn't be fair for me to not say anything about me, right? So I live in New York now. I actually grew up in Atlanta, in North Atlanta, and I was born in St. Louis, but I moved to Atlanta as a kid. So I was an ATL kid until I turned 30, and I moved here. I've been doing radio for about 15. It'll be 16 years this year. So I think this is my 7th show. Totally different than anything I've ever done, and most of my career has been spent. I started as a journalist and reporting news, but most of my career has been spent from Atlanta. So entertainment and hip hop, and covering things in that vein, morning shows in that vein, and really kind of lighthearted. Although we would have serious conversations, I kind of altered everything. I manage a news organization right now, Black News Alerts. Never heard of it? Check it out. There's an app in the App Store. We focus on short form news to for urban communities, just to really get them the information that they need. I believe that an informed community is an effective community. I'm here, and our parent network, Boss FM. I've been with them since 2014. So I grew up in once I left St. Louis and I moved to Atlanta, I would say I love Atlanta. I think it's the most Black positive place in the world. As someone growing up there, it's known for being like Black Hollywood, but as a child, you see Black doctors, Black dentists, Black mayors. There's nothing that you believe that you can't do growing up there. So that was my experience. I grew up in a more of a predominantly white area, which altered my view, but it taught me a little bit more about a culture that I wasn't familiar with. And so I left that. I left and went, and I moved to South Georgia for college, which that was the first time that I realized that despite where I grew up, it was more about social class than skin color. And it's really interesting there. I think it was clear that I was Black. It's Georgia. Atlanta's a little bit different. People that have spent time there know that it's a little bit different than the rest of Georgia. But if there was an incident, if my friends, I never really had run-ins with the police or anything, but if there was an incident, they would call your parents before they locked you up. And that's just how that community was. And it's still that way, which is not what the story was once I left there. And honestly, I say a lot of, I realized that I was in fact a Black man after I left that area. And once I left home and went to college and had some interactions that made it clear that the color of my skin was more prevalent than what was in my mind, what was coming out of my mouth. They saw skin color first, acted on skin color. But before we even jump into that, I want to talk a little bit just about childhood. And I think that it's all of you kind of have all of you have different stories, but I think you've kind of touched some of the same areas. I think that people don't often understand what the life of a Black child is like. And so sometimes it's not the same for everyone, but sometimes you're exposed to things earlier than you should be. Sometimes because of a family situation, you have to grow up a little faster than you need to. And I'm finding just in my research and in covering stories like this, that people don't even understand. They don't know the backgrounds of Black men. They don't understand, and they really believe that pretty much we're all the same. We all kind of come from the same places, and we are all the same. So it's like we're monolithic when we're not. We're all nuanced. We're all different. We all have different experiences, and different experiences have brought us to where we are. So I wanted to start, and I'll start with So Love Hip Hop. Did you ever feel as a child that you had more pressure to grow up a little faster, or to perform some responsibilities that other children or people as a child should not have to shoulder responsibilities that a child generally wouldn't have to shoulder?
Oh yeah, I mean, First of all, my mom's had me when she was 14 years of age. She just basically said, you know what, I'm a teenage parent and I gotta go get a job. She started learning how to type. So I had to come home from school. I was a latchkey kid. I had keys to the crib. I had to make sure that, laundry was done, but when I was 9 years old, was
Wow.
cooking. At 10 years old, I had a sister. So at 12 years old, I was the one picking her up from the daycare, helping out my mom's because yeah, she was working and my stepfather, he was doing what he was doing, but I was still like basically had responsibility in the house. It wasn't a childhood where I could just go and just chill and play video games all day. Nah, you got to do this, you got to do this, and not because it was for you to learn, because that's your contribution to this household. Mom Deuce is paying rent. Mom Deuce is going to work. Making sure you got bread on the table. You're gonna make
Right.
sure you do whatever you got to do to contribute to this household, whatever's required. So that means go to the grocery store. That means I need you to go pick up my cleaning. I need you to go take your sister over here. I need you to go ask, even doing things like this, like going to the store, to the bodegas and not having no money and having to hand them a note. Like, yo, can you please give us some eggs and some milk so we can eat tonight? And reading the note and knowing that he's gonna look at you and he's gonna say yes or no. And having that responsibility and knowing that he's gonna look to you to bring back that money. Because your mom's ain't going to the store, you the one going to the store. So as a young black kid, yeah, I had responsibility, and it was a matter of this is for the betterment and for the survival of our family. So that's a childhood. That was my childhood, at least. You know what I mean?
Wow. Okay. This interesting, and I think just stand there for a second. Do you think that those responsibilities, well, you took them on because it was a responsibility. I mean, you were taking responsibility for your family. So I think any logical, at least, and I think that way probably because I am a black man. This is what needs to get done. I'm going to do it, not just because I mean my mom is my mom. She's asking me to do it, but she also needs me to do it. So it's important to do that. Do you think that ever affected the way that you responded, like from an emotional standpoint? If you Do you think there were emotions that you had to suppress because of that added responsibility?
And you know what? That is that's very important. That kind of hit me a little bit because having to suppress my emotions, because even at 12 years old, Mom Deuce was sick. So now it's even more responsibilities. And it's like, I can't even say, yo, I'm stressed out about this because, wow, Mom Deuce is sick. It needs to be done. I can't make her feel bad about it. But at the same time, I got to stand up as a man because you're a black man. You hold your shoulders up. You can't cry. So having to suppress those feelings and still endure and I grew up hip hop, so you can't cry. You got to put your hoodie on, rock the sag pants and keep it moving and do what you got to do. But you still
Right.
got to be tough, and you had to suppress it. So it did affect me. It affected my relationships. It affected my ability to learn, to accept direction from people who didn't understand where I was coming from. It gave me a sense of, yo, these emotions I know are going to erupt somewhere. So at the same time, I'm always on edge. So that's the way I kind of suppressed it. I was always on edge, so people kind of either stood with me or stood against me. And
No,
and
no,
that was my
I
emotion.
appreciate you. I appreciate you for sharing that because I think that's often a part of the story of our story that people don't realize. They don't know that you didn't have the opportunity to have an emotion as a child, and I think that an emotional community, psychiatrists and psychologists, a lot of them, like children need that, and that's the messaging that we get now. But in our community, it's often the reason that we're told that you're a boy, you can't cry, you can't do this. It's because it's more of a protective mechanism when you look at it from a different standpoint because they know the world that you're going into. They know the expectations that will be on you. They know how you will be perceived if you are um, someone that's letting that emotion show. Although we come to find out, especially as you grow into an adult, that showing emotion is not really a sign of weakness; it's a sign of humanity. So thanks for that, Ohini. I wanted to check with you next. With when you were growing up, did you have situations where you felt like you were forced to grow up, or was your life situation a little different?
I definitely feel like it's a balance of being forced to grow up quicker and then also being held back a lot and not getting a certain sense of maturity that other people in, I think, different situations may have learned. And there are ways that, I don't know if it's just because I'm a black man, or because I'm a human being, things that happen to me force me to grow up quicker. But yeah, a lot of it was socioeconomics, having to travel to school by myself at like 9 years old, because that's the school that for me, I was like a smart kid. So that was the expectation for me to be able to handle my own self and do the things that I needed to do to get out the hood. So there wasn't like that. I don't necessarily feel like that neutered me in a sense, but there were other things. Again, I guess how the outside world treats you when you find out the outside world is not the only world that exists, that really forces you to like grow up in a mean sort of fast way. It makes you hardened, and it makes you apprehensive about having certain type of relationships. But also, yeah, I had a lot of child love. I had a lot of kid love. I had a lot of love in my peer group, from the peer group that I had, and the close knit of my family that allowed you to keep some innocence. So I want to say both. Being black actually made having to have your sense of innocence and family even stronger and keep you even more closer, because otherwise just being out there and being and just divorcing your parents, or being able to live in a way that is just like out there, you usually don't survive as a black person. So yeah, I want to say yes, with a twinge of positivity with that.
I got you. Yeah, and I think even the connotation, I think that sometimes even the connotation of us having these conversations, people think that there is some negativity attached to it, and it's really not. I think that the more that we understand and that we're perceived as the people that we are, because we are in fact people, then there's a different level of respect. We're not ignored. And we can also help each other. I think that, I've talked to a number of people, and I've been in just weird spaces. I've always had some type of employment that kind of forced me to connect with people. And I'm grateful for those opportunities because it's taught me a lot about myself. I think that being that pressure, I think that pressure can be a teacher. I also think that, and So Love Hip Hop, you alluded to this as well. Your mom was sick and you're 12. How do you internalize that? You battle with that. And if it doesn't come out now, we know eventually it will come out. And so as you went on and as you matured into adulthood, walk me through how some of that manifested.
I'm usually the rock. I'm the guy who makes sure that everybody else is okay before I'm okay. So my feelings really don't matter because I got to do it regardless. So for me at 12, I mean, even when it happened, basically my mom's lung collapsed and it's like she can't breathe. And there's some other things that went on after that, but life changed. That means I got a sister who's 2 years old. Yeah, her stepfather's there and we got family members, but I'm gonna have more responsibility with her. I'm gonna have to make sure I go do other things, but suppressing that feeling of I can't even really express to my mom, yo, mom, I'm stressed out. I don't want to do this. Because some days I'm 13. I want to go hang out with my boys. I want to go do this. And I can't do that. I want to just chill out today. I can't. So, and even to express it, I knew looking at her face, looking at her, she didn't want to have me do that, but that was the circumstance. So really feeling like I have no choice. And it wasn't a negative. And I'm glad you pointed that too, because I'm sorry, I just want to build over what we're talking about. It's like just to express yourself, it was always identified as that's negative. As a black man, just to say something was negative. So what happened to me was by suppressing that, I realized I was killing myself little by little. So even the whole idea of who I am, soul of hip hop, is I'm going to express myself. I got my feelings matter. And so therefore I taught my daughters that. I teach my, people that come around me that, yeah, that's what my reality was. But
That's kind
as
of
I
where I was going.
mature and began to heal.
That's exactly where I was going, because I wanted to know, like, you got daughters. Did you feel compelled to ensure they were able to express themselves? Like, because a lot of times that gets missed because you weren't able to do it. The relationship may get strained with a family member or a child. And so when you have conversations with your daughter or your daughters and you feel like they were holding back, how did you compel them to share some of those emotions with you?
Well, when my 11-year-old, my youngest one, that's still an everyday struggle. But something happened to her in daycare where I needed her to speak up. We deal with assault, but somebody did something they wasn't supposed to do, and she didn't say nothing. So at that moment, it was no, you speak up. And then it kind of went a little bit to the other side where she felt I can say anything to anyone anyway. And it's like, hold on, no, there's boundaries and there's protocols, but it's very important that they, as young Black women, that young Black ladies, that they can express themselves. That I don't care what you say, you just got to know how to say it. That's my thing. It's a respect that come with it, but you can express yourself. You can say whatever, but it has to be done in a respectful manner, and you can express anything. So for me, because I dealt with it, part of my healing was to always share with them. If I suffered through it, I don't want you to suffer through it. I'm gonna give you what I hoped I could have done, and hopefully they choose that. And I've seen that they are learning from that. So
I love that. Hold that, because we're gonna come back to transparency in just a second. Isaiah, how about you as a child? Did you have to deal with pressures prematurely, like responsibilities that you didn't feel like you should have had as a child, or was your child a little different?
For me, there weren't like pressures of, are we gonna eat tonight? My pressure was, you're a Black kid, so you
I
have to
can't hear
be
Isaiah.
better than everybody.
I can't hear you. So let's try to come back to Isaiah, and let's work it. You can hear him?
Oh, I could hear him.
Okay. So, all right. I'm sorry, Isaiah. Go ahead.
Oh, lost him now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got that Teddy Riley Wi-Fi.
Yeah. We're gonna have to figure it out. I think the internet is saturated because everybody's still quarantining for the most part. So we'll try to get him back and see if we can get that answer. So Love Hip Hop, I want to go back to you and talk about a little bit more about that transparency, because I think it's hard for people that have had to suppress emotions, suppress feelings, suppress pieces of themselves to be transparent. And I think that you having the opportunity to do that with your daughter, I would imagine that has actually spilled over to your everyday life and how you kind of live. And I think that, to me, that's inspiring, because it took me until I was 25 to be able to just tell people the truth all the time, talk about what I've been through, who I am, what I'm going to do, why I'm going to do it, what I believe, and just giving people all of that. But it usually takes some type of event for that to happen. For me, it was 3 months in the hospital with meningitis, and it didn't look like I was going to make it. So after that, it's like, every single day, I'm going to live like, I got to tell people this is the truth. What was it for you that got you to that point?
Hip hop. That's why hip hop. It was hip hop. I mean the true nature of hip hop, not the business side of it, not the industry. But I always, like, even though I had to suppress those feelings, I always wrote. I'm an MC, so I always was a writer. I always wrote my feelings out. So even though I wasn't able to verbalize them in the way I wanted to the people I wanted to, I always had an outlet. So when I was out there grabbing that microphone, I was always being myself, but suppressing my feelings to authority figures, to my parent, to my mother, to my grandma. I couldn't necessarily share it with them. but you know, my behavior showed it. But the event that really did it is literally in 2005. I lost another daughter. She died in my hands,
Oh
and she
wow.
transitioned from this plane of existence to another, and in my hands, and I closed my eyes, and the world changed. And it was Precious Wenda Grant, and she was born and she passed away November 25th, 2005. And I'm grateful that I had the ability to even have that moment, because it gave me a sincere appreciation of, I have no time to not share who I am. I have no time to not be who I am. If I'm doing that, that's why I stand in my truth. So for me, I had to. It was a matter of life or death. It's either express yourself and be everything that you know you are, or die. And it was a matter of, no, I didn't want to die. I chose life. That's even that goes into my brand, my movement, all that. And but it is a matter of the black man's perspective in hip hop. Soul Love Hip Hop is about putting love back into hip hop, healing, understanding what we're doing by saying, hey, I suffered from this when I was a kid, but I'm not gonna have my children endure it. I'm gonna let them know, I don't want you to endure what I endured. I want you to be better from what I've learned. And
No,
so
I mean,
transparency was important, because it was either life or death. For me, it was life, and for them, as my extension of myself, my kids. So I'm gonna give them transparency, give them the ability to express themselves, because that's the most important thing.
that's so dope. I think that piece of yourself and it became your brain. I think that's amazing, and I think that's the reason that we're doing this series, and the reason that we're having this conversation, because people don't, like I said, they see a response, and they may see anger in a black man and want to attribute all black men to having that same type of anger for the same reason, and it manifests itself. Life experiences always manifest themselves in different ways. Isaiah, do I have you back?
I can't hear him now.
I can't hear him either. We'll keep trying to work on that. I don't know what's going on. Um, in that same vein, I think your experiences really kind of shape your perspective on life, and even some of the decisions that you make. When you are faced with like in our current society, um, there are a number of things that kind of affect us. And so I'm going to jump to a feeling that, and I haven't covered this in any other segment. I think that we all have certain types of expectations, and we all feel one way or the other. And I think that I'm gonna go back to 2008, when Barack Obama was elected as the first president of the United States.
The
And
first
people felt
president?
different. Say that.
You said the first president?
I said no, when he was elected president, not the first
Oh.
president, but when he was elected president, there were a lot of people that felt one way or the other about it. And I think for me, I think the semblance of seeing somebody that looked like me was monumental. And people had different expectations. But I want to use this as a barometer as I give some other examples. If you remember how you felt when he was elected, share
So I'm
that
gonna
with us.
give somebody else a chance
We'll
to
we'll
say
start with
something.
Doheny,
Yeah,
and then we'll come back to you. So love.
I
It sounds
know.
like I might have Isaiah back. So
Yeah, maybe
uh,
as a black man, people might be upset, but like I really ain't feel anything. It's like politics is not really my shtick. And I feel like a lot of times we look to politicians like they are parents and they are
right,
there to solve our problems. And like, my financial status, the amount of jobs that were available for a person like me, the amount of grant writing for the arts did not change with any of the presidents since I've been alive. The neighborhoods that I lived in did not become stronger in black businesses. Um, More education for black children and black businesses did not change when Obama came in. And although I love what the president as a figurehead represents and his representation
Sure,
as.
sure. And I'm not asking you to make it something that it wasn't, because I
Yeah,
think you're
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
feeling.
Like I understand. I understand. I'm not lack or devoid of understanding what that representation does for the little kid that doesn't have any context for seeing a strong black leader who survives. Because also a lot of my history is built off of like black leaders who are strong black, but they don't survive. They're killed. You know, so I think we see him as a person who was able to play the game and survive and get through it. So I like that as an idea, but yeah, for me particularly, people may look at me weird, but it didn't really. I didn't. Maybe when I look back in the context of history, but in the moment, I was just like, yo, I gotta go to work. And that didn't, and it didn't change. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like,
No,
oh,
no, no, no,
black
no.
president,
And
I gotta go to
that's
work.
exact. That honestly, that's exactly what I'm looking for, because I think that, again, there's always a misconception of black people felt this way and black people felt like this and that. Like, but this is your time to say this is what I felt. This was my truth, and this is where I
Yeah.
was. So I don't think there's not a wrong or right answer here. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with feeling the way
I don't
that
want
you
the
felt.
cavalcade. I don't want the cavalcade of blacks how we do to be hitting me up on the internet like, oh, you ain't like Obama. Huh? I just, you know what I mean? I wanted
No,
to.
man. Listen, everybody else gets to share their thoughts and everybody else can say their truth. And then the moment that, we share, we get attacked. And the attack isn't always coming from the other side or another race. Sometimes it's just coming from inside. So that's why I asked that question. And I kind of pivoted because that's not even like the lane I was going in. But thanks for sharing that. I think that another question that I have, and I think that you guys may be able to offer me some valuable insight on this. When you think about labels, and I'm not a huge proponent of being labeled, or someone that needs to be labeled, but in so many ways, America requires the label. And in conversations that I have, I often find myself not wanting to attribute a made up label to myself. So
Like what you
I'm
mean?
gonna ask this question.
Like
Go
what
ahead.
you mean a made up label?
Well, so here's where I'm going with that. So there's like a trajectory of how Black people have been labeled in this country, from colored to African American to Black to now there's POC, there's people of color, and they have all these different labels. I don't mind sharing my perspective on that, but if you had to associate yourself with one of those labels today, African American, Black American, American, is there one individually that you do identify with?
In none of those labels I identify with. None of them. None of them. Actually, part of my healing was to identify myself, to no longer accept anybody else's portrayal of who I am or narrative of who I am.
Okay.
I realized so honestly, like I have one of the most boringest names. My government name is William Anthony Grant. That's what I do when I sign. But Soul of Hip Hop is who I am. Like that's who I am. Soul of Hip Hop, that name that's on the bottom there, that's who I am. I so love hip hop. And everything I do is about putting love and being love and showing love and putting love into action. So for me, that's my label. So for me, I hear what you're saying. And because of that, I had to try to say, I accepted that I'm not labeled. I'm none of those things that you identify me as. So I'm going to be who I am. And who I am is Soul of Hip Hop. You can say I have a black, the way people look at me just when I step out, my melanin is going to pop. So they're going to identify me that way. So I have to be aware of the labels that are coming my way, but that's not how I identify myself.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm black, man. I think it's beautiful. I think black is the mixture of all colors. When I'm painting and I put all the colors together, it becomes like black or like a dark charcoal gray. It don't become white. It don't become like, you know what I mean? And like I like that feeling of space and that feeling of being connected to the idea of like darkness, which is not which is not a bad thing. I don't think darkness is a bad thing. I think we think of darkness as this thing that's devoid and scary because
Right.
that's how we feel about it. But like to be black, to be compared to blackness, to be compared to that strength, to that mystery, to be compared to like to feel like that just black. It just feels like bam, like it just feels like it feels strong. And I think about James Brown, I'm black and I'm proud, the whole black is beautiful, black and proud movement. I like that. When I wake up and I identify myself, that's what I want it to be like, you know, kingly garbs. And that's how I imagine black though. I don't know how other people imagine what
No,
black
man,
is.
and this is why I thank both of you really for just tapping into that question, because this is the basis of people and their misunderstanding. Um, everybody else gets to label, identify, classify themselves how they want to. And when it comes to blackness, black men, we're thrown into these categories and these labels and place that like we only think one way, we can only be one way. So I think both of those descriptions that both of you have are both beautiful. And I think with reason, I think you not that you, either one of you have to justify your reasoning for how you identify to anybody. I think with both of the reasons that you presented, I think the both of them were amazing. And it's like doing something like this, I even feel bad because it's like I've been doing this for 15 years and I've never even thought to have something like this and have a space for this type of conversation. So every piece of the series is sort of life changing. I think what's valuable also is how Black people respond to not just Black people, but Black men specifically, how we respond to events that impact us. And over the last week, we received footage of a brutal murder that happened in February in Brunswick, Georgia. In the same week, there was another killing. This one by a police officer, and over 10 shots shot into this Black body, with the final statement being made, looks like this is going to be a closed casket. The details surrounding both situations removed from the conversation, just that type of brutality against a body alone. When you, as a Black man, see that type of attack and that type of maiming done to a Black body, how do you internalize that? Do you emote at all? Is it something that kind of halts you? What's your initial reaction? So Love Hip Hop this week, and I don't know. I know sometimes it's too difficult for people to even watch, but we've all heard about it. What was your initial reaction?
First and foremost, I feel so bad. I didn't watch the video. I can't watch the video. I saw the thumbnail. I read what happened. I live in Georgia. I live in Atlanta right now. So this is something that it touched me in a place because it did enrage me. Just to even read about it, it touched me in a place that it makes you want to get up and go do something. Just to try to be civilized and not just say, you know what, I'm angry and I just want to go do something. So for me, it was one of those things where it made me realize once again how precious life was. And it's like, we're out there. It's a killing ground for us. I grew up in the 43rd precinct where, you know, Amadou Diallo was shot 90 times. So, and I was a kid when that happened. So for me, this is a reality. I've been searched and frisked all times. I'm a Black man in America, so I know what it is. So to experience what happens from not even a police officer at first is the two vigilantes who murder a 26-year-old. I got a daughter 24. So he's like a kid to me, you know, to see that kid getting killed by two people who just was afraid of his Blackness, for him doing an everyday activity, that is enraging. The other guy who got killed by the cops, even in response, it just shows that they still believe we 3/5 human. And
Yeah.
the one thing that I'm tired of is that, yeah, we read about it, something happened, but it's like we got to stop just doing the same things and accepting the same things. We got to create a new narrative. I don't know how that's going to begin. I have some ideas, you know what I mean? But at the same time, what's happening is so infuriating. It makes you go out there and when you look at somebody who approaches you in a way that's not black, you want to do something and say, yo, make sure you, not even just a social distance, you better just get away from me just because, not because of social distance, just get away. So that's what I'm feeling right now.
No, and thanks for sharing that because I know I don't put the responsibility of watching something like that. I know that people and I've said before, the space that I sit in and the work that I do sometimes requires me to watch it, but this is watching that video. I actually wished I had not seen it at all. It took me to a dark place. The darkest place I've been in a long time. So, but it is your feelings. I actually echo them, but thanks for sharing them. Oh, Henny, what about you? When you heard about this incident, what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I saw it, and I didn't see the video. I saw the news report. I didn't want to watch the video. I've seen a bunch of them. I remember, for me, the last video I watched, I was in a Spanish restaurant, and News One for some reason was playing the Eric Garner choking. They were playing the full choking on TV, and I just started crying in this restaurant. It had been like months later. It wasn't even fresh in the news anymore. And they played it over and over, and they just had this dude over and over pressed up against this man. And I was just like, I don't want to see that right now anymore, because I feel like it also, there's a certain point in it that makes me docile and want to accept the bull or the violence that goes against black people. And I don't think, yeah, and but it's also it's a tricky line, man, because if we don't see the video, we don't have enough evidence to fight the people. But also, like, why are they allowed to chase down a man if there's a whole bunch of things that where the law and all of this is built in, where that stuff can be allowed, and honestly, unless black people actively lead their lives to pursue racism in a reversed way, there's I cannot I can't ask the oppressor for 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 like, oh, don't be so oppressive on me. That's a ridiculous claim. So when I see this, it makes me angry only because I know that it's existed for so long, and it hurts me to know that a piece of me in my mind is not, because I have things that I care about. It makes me it makes me, I guess, in a piece of me sad that it's like I don't just drop everything and go seek vengeance, because unless they see vengeance, they won't understand that the black body means something, or they don't understand that this is wealth to the nation and to our nation. Is like I'm sort of I'm in a, I guess I'm in a sad place knowing that how wealthy and how much the black body costs because I carry it around, but how a large part of America treats black people, black men, is it just, it blows my mind, and I'm sometimes I'm not able to understand. I'm not able to understand what's going on in this specific part of time. Why does racism exist in such a strong manner? Why can't people drop that sickness? What's the advantage that we really get as a human race by holding down other races? So yeah, I it drives too many questions, too much sadness to watch the video. So I ran, I tweeted, I sent in the letter that you had to sign, and I'm saving up to buy a gun.
Mm. See, and I think thank you just for being honest. I think that I just, even both listening to the response of both of you, I get chills, and it's almost an overwhelming emotion. And for me, I went to, like I said, it was just the darkest place for me. I'm an early riser. I'm somebody like I start my day with like meditation, and I like to just focus on controlling my day. And I think I felt like watching it. I gave two things. Like I in the journalist space, you have to cover these things, and I have to stay dedicated to it, because it's important that the story is told from a Black perspective. It's the story. It's important that the narrative is not only defined by what it's always been defined with. And I felt bad. I felt like I let myself down because I let my guard down, and so usually I'm prepared. If there's another one, I'm like, it's difficult. It's hard. Why is this still happening? So many questions. Me saying it is, you know, it brings solace to some people that are waiting on Black media and Black journalists to speak. For other people, white people in general, or other people that have desensitized themselves to this, me speaking falls on deaf ears. So part of the reason why it was important to have these conversations in these spaces is because there are at least 100 other people, and I'm saying at least 100 other So Love hip hops out here that feel that exact same emotion, that exact same way. There are at least 100 more Ohinis out here with the same response to this every time, and it falls on deaf ears. It goes unacknowledged, and it leaves Black men in a space to where they are still viewed as 3/5 human, less than human, and I think it's just important that that I understand that it's painful. Sometimes it's too painful to share. Sometimes it's too painful to respond. At the same time, it's also painful for those of us that have to watch mirrors of ourselves be treated like worse than animals in so many ways. And when that emotion hits you, it can hit you in different places. Whether you saw it or not, hearing about it, it hits you in a different way. It can hit you. For me, it hit me a few times when I was in the shower, and I just found myself breaking down. Like, man.
Yes, somebody had it on Instagram, and I was scrolling past, and I see the start of it, and I had to keep as it's playing. I was like, "Oh shit, that's what this is," and I had to scroll past it because I was like, I saw it, and I was like, I can't feel like that. I can't, and I don't like. So much stuff is happening in the world right now, and I just couldn't afford to be in the headspace where I could feel like that, and that's just honestly because I already felt bad with the knowledge, just the sheer knowledge of it. It made me mad and angry and sad. So seeing the video would have like put me in a space because I've been in solitude right now, and then seeing a lot of other things like social distancing and way that's being handled through race and class, like it makes you. It can drive it can drive you to a certain place where I don't feel like it's advantageous for the fight of Black men in this society.
I think that this rawness is important. I think it's important because I didn't do this series for anybody but Black people. And I think that a 15-year-old that has presumably the rest of his life to live, or the rest of her life to live, they wake up every day with hope and a presumptive future in their minds. And then to see things like this, at 15, this wasn't really, and I know that it was happening because we really didn't have the technology that can have a camera. Everyone has a full camera that takes pictures and videos at every moment. But for 15-year-olds that are seeing this And they've had to suppress those emotions, like we were talking about in the last segment. They're in positions right now where they are shouldering responsibilities that they didn't know that they would have to shoulder, and now they see this, and the initial response is usually that there's no one cares. It's swept under the rug. It's even viewed. I think one perspective is like showing that it's vicious. It is it should always come with some type of warning. You should not have been anywhere in a restaurant where you can look up and watch a brutal murder of a black body. That just should not be the case. So a question that I would have for you both is if you could give a response, and Solo Hip Hop, I'll start with you just because you talked about transparency and vulnerability. If you could talk to a 15-year-old black boy right now that's looking at this world that loves everything but him, what would you say?
To process, I would say the world doesn't love you, but that's why it's so important to love yourself. I have a strong faith. I have a connection with God, a relationship, and it it is outside of everything else. It's outside of this world. It doesn't matter. I have a connection to it. When I see the anger and the hate, and when I see the hatred towards me, as a black man, I know that I must be doing something right because darkness only really, I mean, not in a negative way, but the hatred. I'm gonna use hatred because you're right. Darkness is not always a bad thing, but when you see hatred staring at you, you know that that's love because the only thing that hate really hates is good things. So I know I must be doing something right. So if I got good in my heart and I'm striving for right, that's the armor I gotta suggest that they build. And I would reach out to that kid and say, you are powerful, you are light, you are capable of doing everything. And the first part is to love yourself and identify who you are. Because once you know who you are, their version of you no longer matters. And that's what I would tell them, to identify with who you are, where you come from, understand the truth about yourself, and that will prepare you to deal with any hate that comes your way.
I think I appreciate that. I think that's good advice. Ohini, what about you? What would you say?
The good thing about being young is that the world is going to change in a way that I never expected and that I won't see. So for any young person, I will let them know that how I've seen the world is not necessarily how they have to see the world. And I don't think society, and not the world, like society, that's a specific difference. I don't think society hates the black man. I actually think it's like a sense of envy because of the way we embody the rhythm of the universe. And it's something that has come naturally a lot for melanated people. And I think that's hard to deal with people who don't get that version of like we still love each other when we broke and poor. We still love each other when it's chitlins. We still love each other when we slaves. We still love each other when it's crack. We still love each other when it's COVID-19. No matter what's happening, black people still find a way to find that love. And I think that makes society nervous, and that it makes them very envious of like that feeling. So I would tell a young person, like, you know, be you on 10. Find knowledge, seek knowledge for yourself, seek knowledge without us. Don't worry about like society gonna hate whether you do well or not. So you might as well do well. I think each time we talk to young people, I try not to even bring up the ideas to my son about the hatred of black. Like he knows that exists, and when we talk about it, I'm like, yeah, that's out there, but there are so many people right now who are working toward changing the world. If you vibrate toward that, those people will connect to you and you will change the world. If we keep being focused on the hate, that even matters on a global sense. So I would tell a young person, vibrate toward positivity, vibrate toward knowledge of self and knowledge of others.
Sure. So I think that I think that both responses are helpful. Where I struggle is that I think the messaging is there. I think that in our families we are really attempting to promote positivity, and whether it's faith or whatever it may be, we do our best to convey these messages. And then we have an event. It's something that kind of happens and kind of jolts the public. I think that it's important to continue to have the conversations, to continue to increase the positivity. I think it's imperative that we don't forget these moments, and we don't forget both our history. We can't forget the resilience, but we also I don't think it's healthy for us to forget the pain, because in forgetting, I think it's really, really easy for us to become complacent. And it's an interesting place to be. But I think that it's going to take some collective work from all of us. So more than anything, I appreciate you guys just sharing your heart, your perspectives, your truth. And it's just something that you can't get every day. People, for too long, I think we've had voices that have not been heard. And as I'm dedicating the rest of my life to ensure that these voices are heard. There is space for these types of conversations. There is are spaces for us to thrive, and that those spaces remain safe. I gotta wrap it up, but So Love Hip Hop, if people want to reach out to you or follow you or what you got going on, what's the best way for them to connect?
Right now, you can catch me on Instagram, SOLUVHIPHOP1. And I'm doing some things there. I'm also presenting some writing projects. So, but Instagram right now is the best way to catch up with me as I began to present more content to present my brand. So that's what I'm working on. And that's what this time of the quarantine and us staying home has brought out of me, an opportunity to actually present my ideas in a clear and more clear way.
That's dope. We'll put your information out there and make sure people know how to catch up with you. Ohene, how about you?
Thank you for having me on your show and talking So Love Hip Hop. Alex, I've been really happy about the state of blackness that's coming up right now here in the roaring 20s. And I'm at Ohene Cornelius, at Second Funniest Comedian in the World, at Harlem River Yacht Club, at Smokes and Jokes Comedy. You can go to my website, www.ohenecornelius.com. You can go on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Ohene. I just dropped a project called Lenox Avenue. At this point, if you go and search my name and I don't come up, I did not do my job. So
I feel it. All right. Yeah. No, absolutely, fellas. Thank you so much for coming through. This would not be possible without you. And of course, if the opportunity presents itself, I would love to bring you back and have further conversations just to push things forward for us. That's going to wrap Black Man Hear Me today. But you know where this conversation is happening. On Muted Nation, weekdays, 1 p.m., Boss FM Radio. Download it in your app store, bossfm.com, unmutednation.com. The conversation continues. Stay with us.